to conclude on Captain Marvel, the movie wasn't made for me either. You know, I am a woman, and I certainly am attracted to tall blonde women who are super, you know, toned and athletic, and I love that. But it wasn't made for me. I am not a superhero fan. Like, I don't love comic book films unless they're directed by Christopher Nolan, and they are called The Dark Knight, and to a lesser extent, The Dark Knight Rises. I am a Star Wars girl, and most of that is based in nostalgia. So I'm not even like a Captain Marvel fan. The movie was fine, but like the it still means something to me, and it still bothers me that it's not widely embraced, like warmly embraced and widely regarded as like important. And for any single sad, tragic little soul who thinks they should keep politics out of our superhero films, let me just stop you right there. Weirdly enough, for someone who doesn't love superhero films, I really like the mythology of the comic books. I like the origins of the characters, and let me say that there's nothing more political than than Marvel Comics. If you go watch these documentaries, they had one on the History Channel that was riveting. Most all of the iconic characters were created in response, and the DC too. I'm talking about like Wonder Woman. They were created in response to political movements at the time, like Captain America and the Nazis. I can't say every single superhero character was created because of politics, but many of the ones that you know are. Think about Black Panther, which does predate the movement, but it was the first black superhero. It came out in the late 60s. Do you think that's and it was yes, it was the first black comic book character that had superpowers. You think that's a coincidence that it happened in the civil rights era? Of course it wasn't a coincidence. And it was based on historical leaders of the Black Power movement. And so it's just like when people say to keep politics out of sports. That has never been something that existed. Politics and sports have always been intertwined. These people just want their politics out of the comic books. And that's not how evolution and mythology works. I actually think about this a lot because it's so funny. I feel that a significant portion of the population lacks basic sense of self-awareness. And I wonder, and I've thought about this, like, most people are going to see themselves as the hero in their own story. They're not going to view themselves as the villain. But I wonder if they see that the bad guys in a lot of these stories, like think about Star Wars. Think about the Resistance and like the First Order. The sound cut out on those last two videos, but what I was trying to say was that comic books and politics have been inextricably linked since the beginning. Think about Superman. The very first issue of Superman, where he's dangling a Washington, D.C. lobbyist over the dome of the Capitol. Or Captain America, who came into fruition where only J. Edgar Hoover knew his identity. When we started fighting Nazis. I mean, that's the very first, it's on the cover of Captain America where he's socking a Nazi in the face. And then after the war, comic books' popularity just kind of died off because soldiers came back and didn't want to read comics anymore. They were changed, they were transformed. It seemed silly to worship these heroes in spandex when that's not at all what war is really like. Fighting the enemy is really like. But there's more. So up until JFK, comic books were kind of out of favor. In fact, in the 50s, there was a Senate subcommittee discussing how comic books perpetuated juvenile delinquency. Pretty funny. We're always concerned about the youths, but when really their brains aren't fully formed and they're just terrible. There's a lot of evolutionary research about why teens are risk takers and so naughty. Read it; it's pretty interesting. And then with comic book writers really liked Kennedy, and there was even a tie-in where comic books tied in with Kennedy to promote physical fitness in kids. And then in the 90s, when Superman died, Hillary and Bill eulogized him. And after 9/11, the gritty 90s dissipated and became more optimistic and patriotic. And then there was Wonder Woman, created in the 1940s by Professor Marston, a psychiatrist most renowned at the time for inventing the polygraph, through which he learned that women were more honest than men in certain situations and were more efficient workers. He wanted to create a superhero who triumphed with love over fist and firepower, and was greatly inspired by liberated, non-conforming, non-traditional women. Like people who were doing essays on birth control movement and whatnot. He actually was a very, very intense feminist who thought that women should be in charge of society, the leaders of love. He wanted a woman superhuman who was like Superman, power-wise, but also feminine and beautiful yet strong. I think he nailed it. So what I'm really trying to say is that if you believe that politics should remain out of the pages of a comic book and off of the big screen, you don't want them infiltrating your like popcorn escapism, well, then you need to look for something else. I mean, that's just always going to be the backdrop and the background. It's why comic books exist. It is the impetus for their being. Real life villains exist, and oftentimes are the ones who are trying to suppress and take away rights or fight against equality or do evil, and I think people need to take a big look in the mirror and understand that feminism, although not super rampant in Captain Marvel, is a good thing. It's not a dirty word. It just means women empowerment and equality. It's good. Buy into it.